Welcome to Timeless Stories. I'm James Smith, and today we delve into the harrowing tale of Jim Jones, infamously known as the Devil's Preacher, and the tragic events leading to the Jonestown Massacre. If you appreciate deep dives into history's pivotal moments, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories. James Warren Jones was born on May 13th, 1931, in the small town of Crete, Indiana, into a family teetering on the edge of poverty. His early years were marked by hardship and alienation. His father, a disabled World War I veteran, was often absent, and his mother struggled to keep the family afloat. The home was far from warm. Tension hung in the air like a storm cloud, and young James grew up feeling unloved and overlooked. The hollow ache of poverty was a constant companion, gnawing away at his sense of stability. But James was no ordinary child. Even as a boy, he exuded an uncanny intensity that unnerved those around him. He spent hours poring over the Bible, drawn not just to its teachings, but to the dramatic stories of judgment, wrath, and redemption. By the age of 10, he was staging elaborate sermons for the neighborhood children, imitating the fiery preachers he admired. He delivered his make-believe sermons with such passion that even adults stopped to listen, unsure whether to be amused or unsettled. James's fascination with religion was more than an outlet for his imagination. It was a lifeline. In a world that felt chaotic and indifferent, faith became his armor, and the pulpit his stage. But even in his youthful zeal, there were glimpses of something darker, an obsession with control. He once locked his friends in a barn, forcing them to listen to his fiery sermons about sin and salvation until they begged to be let out. As James grew, so too did his charisma. In his teenage years, he began attending Pentecostal revivals, where the electrifying energy of the crowd left him spellbound. Here was a world where emotion reigned, where words could move mountains, and where the right preacher could wield power like a god. James didn't just want to be part of this world, he wanted to rule it. By the 1950s, Jones had transformed himself into a young, ambitious preacher with a message that resonated deeply in the racially divided streets of Indianapolis. He preached of a world where the color of your skin didn't matter, where the poor and the downtrodden could find dignity and hope. His fiery sermons drew people from all walks of life, black and white, rich and poor, all captivated by his vision of equality and social justice. For many, James Warren Jones was a savior, but behind the pulpit, his need for control was growing insatiable. What began as a mission of unity and compassion soon became a quest for dominance. Jones's followers adored him, but that adoration fed something sinister within him. He began to test the limits of their loyalty, asking for small sacrifices, extra hours of service, donations that stretched their finances thin. When they complied without question, he pushed further, demanding their unquestioning obedience. By the late 1960s, Jones had relocated his burgeoning movement, the People's Temple, to California. Here he built a sanctuary for the disillusioned and the desperate, promising them a utopia free from racism and inequality. Yet beneath the surface, the temple had become a fortress of fear and manipulation. Jones ruled with an iron fist, monitoring his followers' every move, breaking down their will through public humiliation and psychological abuse. To many outsiders, he was still the charismatic preacher who championed the oppressed, but to those inside, he was a tyrant. As Jones's paranoia grew, he became convinced that the government and the media were conspiring against him. Fearing persecution, he led his followers to Jonestown, a remote settlement in the jungles of Guyana. He promised them a paradise on earth, but what awaited them was a nightmare. In Jonestown, Jones's descent into madness reached its apex. The once charismatic leader now ranted for hours over loudspeakers, his voice laced with venom and despair. He painted the outside world as a place of unimaginable evil, warning his followers that they would face annihilation if they ever tried to leave. Daily life was grueling. Backbreaking labor, meager rations, and constant surveillance. Those who dared to question him were punished mercilessly, their cries a grim reminder of what happened to dissenters. By the fall of 1978, Jones was a man unraveling. His speeches were filled with apocalyptic visions and talk of revolutionary suicide, which he framed as a noble act of defiance against oppression. Many of his followers, worn down by years of manipulation and abuse, believed him. Others stayed silent, too terrified to resist. On November 18, 1978, Jones gave the order that would seal his legacy as one of history's greatest villains. Under the pretense of a act of solidarity, he directed his followers to drink a deadly concoction of cyanide-laced flavor aid. Those who hesitated were forced at gunpoint. Mothers cradled their crying children as they administered the poison, their faces etched with despair. By the end of the day, over 900 men, women, and children lay dead, victims of a man who had once promised them salvation. The world would never forget the horror of Jonestown.